Thank you for joining us, all you directors. I really appreciate it. And I think for the sake of the audience, let's get going on the agenda that we've got today.
Yep.
If you don't mind, I'm going to start with just a quick word of prayer. Or have you done that already?
Nope,
No.
not yet.
Okay, I will do so. Lord, again, we come to you and thank you very much for the opportunity of being your ambassadors in this world, using theater as the vehicle to try to draw and help teach and help our own selves be disciples of yours. Now bless this hour or so, and we pray it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I just want to go to, you have the agenda. I mean, we have a flow of the discussion and we are going to get into that in just one moment. I want to make a quick overview of where we start in this business of directing. And that is number one, and it goes all the way through from the very beginning thought to the very end and closing and after. And that is respect for one another and the treatment of one another. And no director, just because you are in a leadership position, does not make you are a leader of learners, and that includes you. And if you don't learn from your actors and your team, the whole thing, then you are not a proper director. And I want to say, we have no right to yell at anybody. We have no right to belittle anybody, even quietly. We must, if we have things that we really want to help them to learn, encouragement is the way, and gentle guidance and guiding. And if that doesn't work, then work it out the way Christ would work it out. Okay? I really need to make sure we all understand the kind of relationships that you're trying to build in directing a show. And that is high respect for them, and they then return high respect for you. And that's where it's got to be. Okay? I could preach a long sermon on that, but I'm going to make it short. And I mean it, take it, and let's go. Okay? All right. We do have, I'm going to try to follow kind of the flow of the agenda, and that you have, I believe, don't you? You all have something, okay. It is logical to start at the beginning and go from there. We had questions about how do we choose a season? Well, do you want to talk about that quickly? Because you're on that committee. Go ahead.
All right. Choosing a season is not easy. It's not like jumping in and picking a number out of a hat. We have a list of qualifications for each season, but just a couple things you need to know. We try to have a variety. We want musicals as well as comedy as well as drama. We try to make shows available so that actor-wise, so make sure we have enough women parts, make sure we have enough kids parts. We also, but our biggest goal is to make sure that the shows glorify God. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Christian, quote unquote, Christian author to glorify God in the story, but we want to make sure that that God is portrayed as God, as merciful, as wonderful and great as he is. So we spend a lot of time reading plays, trying to figure out exactly which ones to do. It takes us a long time to get through, to come up with what we're going to do. So that's just my quick version of coming up with a season.
Okay, anybody want to add anything to that in terms of how you've seen us and been part of choosing a season? Anyone?
Just
Yeah,
that there's a lot of discussion on a regular basis.
Okay.
Sometimes you want to pull your hair out because there's so much discussion. But we don't take it lightly. It's a long process sometimes. And sometimes we talk about a particular play for months before we decide whether we're going to do it or not. We get into diversity and ethnicity, racial issues. We want to draw on that at this particular time. That's why we put one of the reasons why we put Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in the next season. And we hope to have more. We've got 3 or 4 that we're looking at in that vein. So there's just a lot of different things that go on, but it is long, a long process sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. And I would say to be on the committee, we really look for the commitment to the mission of Master Arts. We also look for those people who are familiar with the literature, familiar with our mission, familiar with the literature, and are personally standard bearers of the of Christianity, and so therefore that we have a unity in how we approach theater and drama here at Master Arts. And Tim, you were going to add quickly something?
Only that the interesting thing about Master Arts is that we are a theater, and we consider doing a lot of shows that maybe people wouldn't think of as, oh, this is a show that glorifies God. But truth, telling the story, and telling a story in such a way that it's truthful is giving glory to God. I think of some stories that we've done, like Man of La Mancha, that Lorna, there were some really, really difficult things that we wrestled with when we chose to do that show. But I think the way we did it was both honoring, truthful, and because we approached it with the sensitivity that we did, it was glorifying to God, even though some of it was some very difficult subject matter. So I think I want to make sure people are clear that we do and are willing to tell some difficult stories. We just want to make sure that we're telling it in a very truthful and a God-honoring way.
Yeah.
With integrity. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I want to say, I back up. Tim's, we will tackle shows like that, which people will say, well, why is a Christian theater doing that? But we want to do it from the perspective of that there is sin in the world, and we want to deal with that honestly from a Christian perspective, from the fact that we need redemption in this world. So we're not afraid to deal with those subjects because of that, because of the way that we approach it. We will approach it from a different perspective or a different way than, say, a secular community theater would deal with it. So I think the way that we deal with it is different than theaters. And so we're not afraid to do that, to put the truth out there.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else that wanted to make a comment there? All right. All right. The other question, and along with this choosing a season, have we given opportunity, or do we give opportunity for the community to give input to shows that we choose, etc.? I know. Go ahead.
We definitely do. Tim, the first play you directed here, Horizons of Gold, come from one of our actors. Anna Colby moved down to help her mom, and she saw this play and called us back and said, you've got to do this play. And because of her, somebody who wasn't part of the committee and wasn't even at Master Arts at the point, we looked into it. So yeah, we do. We listen. When you guys say you need to do this play, we actually do listen.
Yeah, we do.
We've actually done surveys with our audience also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting input from them on what they would like and what their suggestions are.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we did When Calls the Heart.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. We are glad to have people suggest. Very glad and open to have people suggest shows that we should look at, and have taken many recommendations and have done shows because of that. Okay. Anything else about choosing a season that we need to discuss in terms of from a directorial point of view? And I would say too, even though we sometimes don't put out the words to all the directors that we've had in the past and say, hey, what would you like to direct? We want to open that up to you always. And if you all, because the directorial point of view is a very good recommendation. And because if you have seen it and you think directorially it would be something that you would be proud to direct here at Master Arts, please tell us and make sure we learn that and know of it. Because we can't be everything to everyone, and we can't know every show that's ever been around out there. So just for that matter, make sure you list it. And community out there, those of you that are listening, we would welcome any kind of suggestions or any kind of recommendations. And please let us know, let somebody know. And we will be glad to at least look into it and consider it and see how it fits for here or now or in the future, whatever. Okay. All right. Choosing a season. I know we had the question of who directs and how is that decided? Oh boy. Actually, we're trying to build, and we do have a good pool of qualified directors now, and we've been trying to build that for some time. And the more the better, for that matter. That is qualified people that have shown either somewhere else or here or wherever their ability to direct and to bring a show to fruition, both in quality and in relationships with people. I guess that's what we look for. Yeah, a lot has to do with the relationships and the quality of the show. Those two things, I think, are very, very strong in our figuring as to whether a person is really the kind of person that we would like to see in leadership around Master Arts in the shows and in the because we have more than, I mean, obviously our quality of shows, we've got to keep that going, or we may as well fold, because there's a lot of good theater in this city and in this area.
Yeah,
and there is a lot of good theater. And so we have tremendous, a tremendous credibility factor to deal with. And so we've got to have that quality in order to have the credibility in the area. But we also have to have the commitment to our mission. And that includes the way we treat people and how we carry out our business. Any other quick comment that needs to, that's an additional thought beside these? I'm totally open. Okay, let's go on. My agenda keeps going away. Okay.
Well, we're all the ones that you pick, so we're not going to say anything.
exactly. Yeah.
I've been thinking for a long time, if you pick me as a director, we've got problems,
Oh, that's true. Well, I know, and I will say that's a very hard thing to do. It's very difficult and challenging. And I would say pray for Master Arts and all the family, and you're all included, that we all stand together in trying to keep up the standards and help each other and all of that, Okay, we'll go on. Okay, let's go on to starting and preparing for a show. Now, there's all kinds of things that get dumped into this category, but think in terms of what you do to prepare for a show. Also, how do you build a team, a production team, in preparing to get the thing out there before this is before auditions. Comments, make them short and to the point. Go. And I'll quit talking. Ha!
I'll start. Research, and read. I read the script multiple times to get the truth of the story, to get the truth of the characters. I start to find the beats and the moments that really impact me, because usually if it's going to impact me, I can impact the audience with it. So research and reading. Lots of it. That's my 2 R's.
There's a question along with that that says, how much do you decide beforehand as a director? And my comment is, you decide everything before auditions, but be willing to change.
Yeah, for me, it's read
Yeah.
and use your imagination.
Yeah.
You have to conceptualize how you're going to do this show in this space. My first show was The Foreigner. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of reading because I got asked to do that show less than a week before I had to do auditions. So,
Yeah. Woo.
but I read it a few times, and I started thinking, how are we going to stage this thing here? There's a scene where somebody has to be in the room and the audience has to believe the other people in the room wouldn't see him. Those are things that you have to think about. You have to conceptualize those kind of things. You're going to have to think about, sight lines. You have to think about stage pictures. How is this, if I cast an older person for this role, do I have to cast someone in this other role the same age? Does it matter? There's just tons of things that you have to think through. You have to imagine. Is this play? Is it just a play? Is it a play? Do you play it? Do you stage it realistically, like say The Foreigner, or do you stage it, like if we were to do a Waiting for Godot or something like that? That's theater of the absurd. You're right. You're not. That's not a realistic play. You don't have to worry about a box set and how you're gonna, the things are totally open when it comes to staging, a play like that.
Or try a Lion, Witch, in the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to bring that up, not necessarily that play, but what a lot of people might not realize is how bound you are to the script. There are some publishers that will not let you make any changes. Others publishers let you make a lot of changes. So you have to look at things and go, okay, can this part change? Could I do this? Lion, Witch, in the Wardrobe was locked in, no changes. Couldn't change the wording, but that didn't mean you couldn't add things. We didn't add wording, but we added things just to make it a different experience. So that's one of the things that you have to look at is go, okay, I'm locked in with the script. What can I do to make this a more encompassing production?
Okay, preparation. What do we else do? What do we have to do before? I think we're hitting the main things. I mean, the research, and being thoroughly understanding. But I will tell you, I've directed some shows that I learned a lot through it. And I thought I knew a lot beforehand, but when I got into it, man, I knew very little. Try Copenhagen. That was one I learned a lot. Whatever. But preparation.
I think it's also important that you are able to change your mind.
Yeah.
Everything is
flexibility.
And you might have this idea ahead of time, exactly how it's got to be, and then you get into it, and you have to be very flexible. I mean, there's been plays. I mean, I'm thinking, I had it all planned out exactly how I wanted it staged, where I wanted everything, and it didn't turn out anything like I had envisioned because I had to change for various reasons.
Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, it still worked very well, but you have to be willing to go with the flow at times.
Yeah.
And sometimes you learn stuff in the middle of rehearsals, either from an actor or whatever, that changes the dynamics, changes how you're looking at something.
Yeah, Yeah, I think flexibility is very, very important. Um, Not that we don't know, what we're doing, so to speak, at the very beginning, but on the other hand, here again, I feel like we're a leader of learners, and we've got to be a learner as well.
Yeah.
I guess I could put it this way too. I've always said a director is a selector, and a director takes a team of people, all who are creative artists, all where you ignite their creativity. That's your part, is to ignite their creativity and guide their creativity so it blossoms. And then with their, and this gets into character and all the rest of auditions and everything else. But if you're not drawing on all the personnel that you have involved in the play, the designer or especially the actors, etc., you are, then why don't you tape record it and just sit tape recorders up there and you do all the parts and be done with it. It's a symphony, not a solo. Okay, let's go on. Next is, I guess we're ready for looking at auditions. All right, people are asking tips for auditions, helps for auditions. What are you looking for? How do you recognize talent? Do you do talent over physical physical kinds of things, or and some of the questions that we got. Okay, who hasn't spoken to any? Lorna, you haven't talked. Would you like to talk about this one?
I would like to talk about physical against with talent.
Okay.
Considering, because I'm an actress too, I have both to deal with. I think for me as a director, I would like to see talent instead of physical. The reason why is because you can see somebody walking in with that physical being that you want for a certain character, and then they don't do what you want, and you're not even thinking about it. Then comes this some other person that has none of that physical thing that you were thinking about and blows you away at an audition. For me, if a person with their talent and blows you away, that's me. That's what I would like as a director. I mean, physical, we can fix it right now. It's proved to me in an audition that you can be this person.
Yeah.
And then be respectful to that person. If they say, can I please read for this? Like if they write it down, you be respectful to let them do that too. So that's what I like to see in that perspective.
Good. Other quick comments on this? All right.
Actually, when it comes to physical versus talent, I have a story from Foreigner. There's a character, Owen Musser, and when you read that script, you just know Owen is this huge ogre.
Yeah.
And that's, you're thinking, I got to cast a big guy for this. And I only had one guy audition that really fit that description, but he was a teddy bear. He just did not have Owen in him, and there was no way I could cast him in that role. And I did a final reading. There was someone who put on his audition form that he wanted to read for that, and so I had him read for it. He was not tall at all. He was, but he had the attitude that Owen needed. And I got to thinking, you know what? I know guys in my life, that scrawny, short guy who's got something to prove to everybody. And so I cast him in that role, and it worked. Totally worked. You got to be willing to, I had an idea going in of what I needed for that role.
Yeah.
But you have to have the flexibility. You have to be willing to look at it a different way.
Yeah.
Real quick, another example for me, it's like when I did Man of La Mancha, and Sancho is this short, round, fat person, and we didn't have anyone that good, and then Sam comes and blows me out of the water, singing, being that, and so I thought, you know what? Sancho's had been on a diet. Let's keep him a little bit more. We've given him a diet. He's going to be a little bit skinnier than the normal Sancho Panza, you know? So it's like I said, it's like the physical thing sometimes doesn't work at all.
And just to comment on that too, when you cast it and the talent of the person, I mean, shows you that this person is that character, the audience goes along with you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you can, and I have learned from experience to go into auditions with an open mind. And like Lorna said before, if a person asks to read for a certain part and you're like, by all means, let them do that. Because they can, I've had my mind changed at auditions before about who should be what character, whatever. But a lot of times the audience doesn't know what the character is supposed to look like until you show it to them. So, you know, I mean, so yeah, I've learned to go into auditions with an open mind. Like, you know, yeah, if this person wants to read that part, by all means, read that part.
I think
I can think of the truth. Even when it comes to age of a person, I had a 70-some-year-old gentleman auditioning for a 40-year-old, 35, 40-year-old father. And I struggled because I'm going, he's 70 years old, 75 years old, come on. Actually, he was 79 now that I think about it. But anyway, but he was perfect for the role because he just became this person that the script called for. And like Kathy said, the audience believed it. It became believable because he brought the audience with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
there's something else in the audition thing that I think when we say talent versus physicalization, I think for me, the real problem is not that, it's talent versus attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather cast somebody who doesn't quite have all the talent I need yet than I would somebody who thinks they have all the talent.
Yeah.
And I would much rather work with somebody who's flexible and willing to work with me than somebody who says,
Somebody
I know
who's
better than
coachable.
you. Yeah,
Yep, absolutely.
anytime.
And you can see that at an audition too.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
Sometimes.
can.
Much.
Yeah.
you can.
Most of the time, you can.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
seriously, if you're
Every
looking for
once in a
tips for
while, somebody will
auditions,
surprise you, either good or bad.
yeah, if you're looking for tips for auditions, come prepared and be
Yes.
willing to do what the director asks.
Yeah.
If they ask you to read for a role that you have no interest in, read it anyway. Maybe they just need somebody to be able to do the scene that they've got.
Yeah.
If you refuse, you're telling me that I'm going to have trouble with you in the rehearsal process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to add to that, go ahead, Randy.
I think related to that, you know, I will often be looking for things in an audition that apply to one particular character, but I might be reading a different character.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's often a way to. There's a, you know, we look for characteristics, and it isn't necessarily nail this particular speech that this particular character gives. It's your demeanor, it's your carriage, it's your, you know, whatever. In respect also to, sorry, my dog is barking at the neighbors, so I'm in the comfortable outdoors here, but I have to try to avoid my dog barking. Sorry, she also just sidetracked me. So I'll come back to that thought. Tim, you go ahead while I think of what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think very much along with Randy said is just because I'm having you read for a certain part in audition doesn't mean I'm not considering you for another part.
Yeah.
So I would say to any auditioners, and I approach it this way when I'm auditioning myself, is no matter what they have me read, I'm going to give 100%. Even if it's a character that I would never cast myself as in a million years, I'm going to give all that I can to that reading. So the thing I would say to auditioners is come willing to give 110% of yourself, no matter what part you're reading.
Yeah.
Read every part like that's your dream part. Get into each character like that's your dream character.
Yeah.
Because that's going to give me a better sense about how much I'm going to be able to work with you. Like,
Yeah.
Are you really going to give me all of yourself in a character, even if it's 2 lines as opposed to 200? That's the kind of people I want to work with. I want to work with someone who's passionate about the story and not just passionate about this one character. But I'll often, like, if someone comes, a lot of times, if someone comes into an audition and I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for this part, I will deliberately not have them read that part, but have them read a lot of other parts to see if they're going to really work it, if that makes sense.
Tim, yeah, you know, that's further reason to read with all your gusto for any part, because there have been a number of occasions over the years where I've, you know, at the beginning of an audition, maybe the first read or their audition song or whatever, a particular character might seem like a shoo-in for a part, and I play a little game with myself. I'm very careful if I'm early on in the process, especially, and this again has to do with kind of the physicality as well, right? This person looks like the part and they've really hit it from the get-go, but I always step back from that. And in some ways I try to talk myself out of that person. I don't want to go as a foregone conclusion, right? And that's especially important in a context like this, right? We know a lot of the people that we are working with. I find this in the high school situation as well, right? I know a lot of my students there, and so as much as we try to be objective and avoid kind of those preconceived notions, you know, challenging ourselves as directors to step away from that first, oh, this is a shoo-in for this part, and then, you know, maybe 9 times out of 10 you circle back around and they get the part anyway. But there's that 1 time out of 10 where you find that gem that you didn't expect at all. And that's both for us as directors. That's something, you know, it's something important that I do, but it's also very encouraging, I think, for people auditioning, right, who maybe don't consider, you know, maybe have never considered that they could get this part or whatever, but give it everything you got and you might find, you know, yourself very pleasantly surprised, you know, that sort of thing.
I do a little bit of trying to not let everybody in the auditorium know what I'm thinking. So I'll take a person that I'm really considering for the part and have them read all kinds of other stuff, just just so that everybody doesn't think, oh, they've got that one and I may as well not try. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'll take. One thing I do also is that I tend to take just 4 or 5, 3 or 4 or 5 scenes, and that's it. Because otherwise they don't get the good sense, because they got to hear it a couple of times or read it a couple of times until they really are understanding something. And you all can recognize, or at least we think we can recognize when it is a cold read and when they actually know what they're reading. I mean, you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating for them to have only the opportunity to do cold. I mean, what happens and that's what I tell them. Look, I know when it's cold reading, but I also want to know when you do know what you're saying and you do know the idea, you know, where does it come from? You know, that's one of the ideas. Anyone that hasn't said anything that would like to say something on this?
Want to mention just a couple of things to add on to. Sometimes, you know, we do group readings and we'll put just various people. We do that to see how you interact with the other people.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yes.
How are you going to interact with your fellow actors? That's a reason we do a number of group readings. We'll have people read for, you know, a female read for a male part, or a male read for a female part, or whatever, just to see how you interact with other people. Another thing too, for those who are auditioning, you, again, like Lorna said earlier, you have the right to ask if you have not read for something that you wanted to read for, either a part or a scene. You have the right to ask for that. Don't be afraid to do that. Also, if you feel that you did not read a scene the way you think the director wanted you to, you can sometimes get that from the director. You can ask the director, you have the right to ask the director, is there a different way you would like me to read this?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
feel free to express yourself in an audition to get to the point where you think the director wants you to be. So it's as much your process as it is our process. So you have the right to ask questions, to ask for another reading or something, So again, it's in a way up to you how you want to present yourself. So
Tip, read anything they ask, and also don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay. You do have to make sure that you're not just wasting people's time, but on the other hand, but there's a fine line there, but usually people are too hesitant to ask questions, so don't be afraid to do so. Okay, any other point that wants to be made there?
One thing that I will do as a director, and I have yet to have anybody take me up on it, but I offer at the end of auditions an opportunity. If somebody's got a prepared monologue that they want, that they want to read, because I know that not everybody does well with cold readings.
Yeah.
I just want to give them an opportunity to show themselves at their best.
Yeah.
And that is not a bad idea as an actor who's going to do auditions, to have a monologue or two in your pocket anyway.
Yep.
I've announced that beforehand, that we will start with this, with the kind of cold reading, but we will read it enough times that you will be familiar with the scene by the time everybody gets a chance to read it at least twice, but then I will announce that. And at the end, we will also take those of you that might have a monologue prepared, will take, that too, so that they know that that's going to be a possibility. Again, trying to be as fair as you can, because believe me, auditions are a horrible experience. And very few jobs do we ever get in life because we audition this way. I mean, if you think about it, how many jobs that, you'll interview, yes, you'll talk to all kinds of people, but they don't get you up there and make you show off, so to speak, as you feel like you're trying to do or have to do in an audition. So anyway, directors, be sensitive to that and protect all individuals there, so they feel very rewarded, not wishing they would come. That kind of. Okay, any other tricks that you use as a director to help auditions? Anybody? I don't mean tricks, I mean, but anybody else?
I do something a little bit different. I've incorporated doing audition times, having smaller groups. It's a lot longer for the director, assistant director, stage manager to go through all of that. But along the lines of what a lot of people have been saying is that, having 5 or 6 people for 20 minutes, I'm able to see them in different lights, get them a lot more comfortable in their setting.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to, try different things with them that way. It's a little bit faster paced, but also everyone gets a chance to shine. They don't feel like I only got to read twice and no one's going to see me anymore. I'm in the back, or, I'm a new person, so I'm not recognizable. Everyone's very recognizable that way.
I like that. I mean, I like that idea and the approach to the audition.
sometimes I use improv exercises to relax people in the beginning, because everybody's a little tense. So sometimes, depending on the show and if I have time, I like to use some initial improv exercises to
Okay.
one, to get everybody to know each other better, and more comfortable with interacting with each other. So
Okay.
sometimes I do that.
Okay, I'm just checking out this, and I think we've covered most of the audition kinds of things. All right, we're going to go from here to developing character and working. This is the other aspect of working with the actor and actresses. Okay, the questions were things like, do you start with your vision, and then how much do you let the input of the actor influence your vision of the character? These were questions that were asked. How much does the actor, how much do you allow the actor to give the input or do in the terms of motivation, in terms of, characterization? In other words, how do we balance? Is it pretty much dictated by the director as what they want to see from the character, or is it more open, or is it quite a bit open? Where do you draw the lines, and how do you advise on that in building characters?
I like to let my actors let it go as far as they want.
Yeah.
Tell them I will rein them down when they are more than what they're supposed to go. I mean, I love it when they try their best to do different things. And it happened a lot recently with Pemberley, a lot of different things that happened that I loved, that I let them go, let them flow. If it was something that was just way too much, then I say, okay, bring it in, let's rein it in a little bit more. Okay, stop. This is how I want you to do it now. This is how you did it, and I like it this way. So,
okay.
But I like it when actors take initiative and try to do things to show that they are, they can do anything. So
yeah, they are thinking. And I like you bringing them in, and you said there's something that I thought, that's a good thing in terms of this is where I would like you to land, and this is kind of where it needs to be. And I guess I would say, think those thoughts. So it is a fresh time each time, but it's the same. You're bringing it to this, and that's super. Yeah.
I think to jump on top of that, one of the reasons I love theater is it's collaborative.
Yeah.
If it was just me, I would write or draw or paint something very solitary. But one of the reasons why I love theater is because it's a collaborative art form.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, when even coming into auditions and starting rehearsals, I have a pretty strong idea of the characters. I've spent a lot of time with the story. I've spent a lot of time with the characters, and I have a pretty strong idea in my head. That being said, I'm never dictatorial about it, and I encourage actors to discover the character for themselves. I feel like my role is, like you said, Chris, is to encourage them on their journey to connect with who that character is. Now, sometimes I have a really strong, passionate idea of what I need out of a character, but I always let it adapt depending on casting, depending upon the actor that I have. Sometimes the actor doesn't have what I need, and my idea has to evolve to a different place. Sometimes the actor has more than what I need, and they take the character and run with it to an area that I would have never expected, and it's better than what I had envisioned. But I think I'm the caretaker of the story and the characters, but I'm not a dictator. So as a director, I want it to be truly collaborative. I want the actor to feel free to explore and search and find the character and its motivations and its story, so it can be true, so it can be a truthful addition to the story. One of the lovely things that I love to do is I love to spend a lot of time with the entire cast building backstory, what brought the character to this place, regardless of whether it's a small or an ensemble character or it's a lead. And I'll tell you, one of the great things about the shows that I've directed at Master Arts is one of the things I love to hear is when I talk to people afterwards and they say, man, the people in the ensemble were so fully fleshed out characters, and I totally believed, even if they never had a line. That's what I love to hear, because no matter how big or small, you're part of the story. And I think I may have a strong vision, but I'm always want that vision to be malleable and something that can be grown depending upon the actor who's inhabiting that part. So it's a combination. It's a collaboration between the two.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I always tell.
Go ahead.
I always tell my actors. I did use summer stock for 18 years, so I always tell the kids, just go for it, go for it. If you come up with an idea, do it, and I'll either tell you yes, keep that idea, or no, and here's why.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I make them understand. There's an overall picture we have to show, and if they come up with an idea that doesn't fit, that's when I say no, and I tell them why no.
I like to start our
Yeah.
rehearsal process even. Our first thing will be the read through, and then we do the second rehearsal is usually table talk. I come up with character development questions for each of the characters, and through that, use that as a tool to explore their characters so we can get a good solid foundation before we even start the blocking process.
Right.
So, because that's, I think, very important to even your blocking. So, so that's what I like to do as a collaborative effort for all of us to discover together these characters, their place in the story, what's going on in their lives, and like Tim was saying before, their backstories, because they came from somewhere, they didn't just drop into the story. So I usually come up with character development questions for each of them to answer so that they will know where we're coming from. And that way I learn about their characters as much as they do and how they fit in the story. Sometimes I learn some very surprising things from the actors doing those character development questions, like, oh, I hadn't thought of that character like that. That's an interesting perspective. So
Yeah, I would echo what Kathy's saying on that. That's one of the most exciting parts about the collaborative process. You know, we stated at the beginning how much preparation we do: read, know, have a clear picture of what you want going in. But it changes. It inevitably changes. But it very often changes for the better, precisely because you have creative input from other people. And you know, it's I guess I view my role as looking for ways to tap into, to enable actors' talent, to maybe even give them the opportunity to explore areas where they haven't considered, possibilities that they themselves, they didn't know they had this in them, right? I mean, it's most obvious in musicals, right, where you'll have singers who are like, oh, I can't reach that note, and by the time you get to showtime, well, yeah, you can. But the same thing certainly applies in other forms as well. Digging
Enabling,
and that's
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, as I said, that's an exciting part of the process, and it reveals. So it reveals not only characters, right? It fleshes out those characters, but sometimes you arrive at a new understanding of the story overall, right? And that's so that's fun.
Good. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a creative process, and enabling is a good word there you used, and I wanted to make sure, let's use that in our own concept of what we're doing. How to enable, and what kinds of things do we do to enable or to turn on the creativity of the artists that we have with us? Because I think that's part of our job, is to tap into all their creativity. you know, I keep thinking of a symphony, you know, I mean, and we can't, the director cannot do and shouldn't be trying to dictate what every single person in the symphony does to interpret their music. I mean, it has to have a collaborative feel, yes, but each part has to be, you know, and we've got to enable our actors as well. Any other tips on this part, or does somebody want to say something else?
I
Um,
was I
go
was
ahead.
just thinking. I tend to believe that an actor brings a piece of himself to the character.
Uh-huh.
Even when you're playing a really evil person, it's still part of you at your worst, what you could possibly be at your very worst. Um, I see, you know, and sometimes it's an exaggeration of, but I really do. I think you take a little bit of yourself and put it into that character, you know, as an actor. And we have to kind of see that ahead of time when we're going through the audition process, that a little bit of the person is going to be in that character.
Dale, did I kind of thought you were going to say something, and then I didn't know whether you were or
No,
not.
no. The only thing I always try to tell everyone is, you know, no matter who your character is, make sure that they're real.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to be. You've got to connect with them somehow. Don't make it false. Especially if you're in a comedy, don't go crazy. Don't go stupid. The truer you play it,
Oh, yeah.
the better.
Yeah, that's true. They're very true in comedy, that the more it's pushed, the more ridiculous it becomes, and it's not funny at all.
Yeah.
You know, characters are let, they're not made. Um, they are let to happen, and I guess that's what you're trying to do, is to help the actor become that character enough that it's let out instead of made to push out, made to come out. And that's a very different thing, very different thing.
You,
All right.
you need to tell them, you need to direct, you know, the directing is trying to get them to react the way they would react if they were in that situation. Pull on their own personal experiences when they're doing whatever or reacting to whatever they're reacting to.
Yeah, yeah. That is such a hard thing to do, to make it a letting instead of a making. It really is, because you want it to be strong. Okay, this is a powerful moment. I got to make it a powerful moment. And so you really hit it or whatever. And that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the whole training of the experiences of how do we get the mind to think in the acting situation the way it does in our normal lives. And what is it thinking? And thinking in the stream of consciousness, thinking in the mental image, you know, images and thoughts and all the rest. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother semester class in acting, but
Right.
that's true of what happens here. Okay. If there's any other, if I'm going past something, think of something later on that you'd like to quickly say, you're welcome to do so. But we're going to go on to the next section, which has to do with, if I can get there quickly. And I think we've hit the pet peeves. Huh. We've hit.
I have a pet peeve for you, Chris.
Okay.
This is a
Okay.
big one. Actors trying to direct other actors behind the director's back.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Nobody ever does that, do they?
Yeah, that's true. That's true, especially if you give actors license, they tend to then take that license to, you know, involve everybody else. Go ahead, you were, you know, example.
Especially if you've cast a lot of people who have directed.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's my thing. I'm a director when I'm a director. When I'm in a show and I'm acting, I am an actress, not a director. I do not tell the director what to. I give him idea like we've done before, but I'm not going to say, hey, why don't I do this, this, and this? You're not directing. You're not directing.
Right.
Walt is directing, or, you know, somebody is directing, not you.
Yeah.
Get into your actress mode. Don't get into your director mode because you're not directing. You're not. You're not.
Yeah. And this business of telling others, oh, you know, why don't you do this next time when you go out on stage?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh.
I've had that happen a lot of times. And I can remember even saying, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And whatever bothers me sometimes too is when another actor goes to another actor and says, you missed that line.
Yeah.
Oh,
That other actor has 500 million lines, and that other actor who said, oh, you missed that line has 2. So you expect the person who has 1 million lines to forget 1 line.
That's up to the director to handle. I mean
Yeah.
that should be in the director's purview to handle, etc. Yeah, that's
Just, you know.
you've got to discourage that. Yes, you really do, especially as it gets later in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, for sure.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
guess I do have one pet peeve, and I'll just throw it out there and we can leave it. Selfishness. Whether from a lead or someone in the ensemble, for me, theater is always collaborative and it's always an ensemble piece, no matter whether there's a lead or not. So anytime I see one actor doing anything that takes away from another person in the ensemble, that's a pet peeve of mine.
It's about the show, it's not about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Regardless of what role you have. And especially when I cast my leads are expected to be leaders for the rest of the ensemble. And that means they should be serving them, not dictating or drawing the spotlight to themselves. The best leads I've ever cast are the ones who are the most gracious to the rest of their ensemble. So
I'm with you.
that's the one thing I would say.
Actors that aren't coachable.
Well, that's a good one of mine. Yeah.
Or actors that don't memorize their lines ahead of time.
Yeah, and wait till the last week or so.
The last week, and I've run across that where they didn't, the rest of the cast was feeding them their lines during dress rehearsal. Talk about frustration.
Yeah.
I would be so, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
And you
You want to take over the part yourself just because.
and you can come down, you know, you can show them how God love it, it's wasting of our time, but sometimes they don't care.
Yeah.
I'll get it done by the time we open. Don't worry about it. I've been told that. And I'm going,
Yeah,
500
but
grades.
again, that goes back to Tim's thing about selfishness. Is like, yeah, maybe you know you're going to be ready, but you're destroying the efforts of everybody else.
Yeah.
They don't know that you're going to be ready, and you know, remember that you're part of this group.
Well, and they think that being ready is having their lines learned.
Say your lines.
yeah.
They're not really ready.
There's so much more. You have to have the lines learned, and then you can develop your
Really
character.
not ready. No way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. They think they are.
That one thing we didn't really put and talk about is building the rehearsal schedule and exactly what happens when and that kind of a thing. And a little bit that is flexible, but I say that over half of the time of your rehearsals should be memorized. And if you've got 6 weeks, you got 3 weeks to memorize, and 3 weeks must be off book. And I'm talking off book. But boy, if you can convince people that
Boy, that's hard.
can happen.
That is so hard.
Nothing can happen in the brain until you're off the idea of what's my next line.
Mind you, I know there's a lot of leads that have a lot of lines that never get out of stage, and they got all these lines that they have to memorize. Okay, I'll give them a little bit a benefit of the doubt because they've got more lines than anybody else.
Yeah, they got to
But-
start earlier.
But
That's
they
all.
got to start somewhere, you know, they got to
Yeah.
start.
I've been in a show where I was the lead, but I had to depend on a guy who had the least number of lines in the show, who was calling for lines at final dress.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
doesn't
And
matter. It
that-
doesn't matter.
you are so vulnerable. Is he going to give me my line? I don't know.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
going to have to figure out a way to keep this show moving when he doesn't come up with the line?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We might want to move on, or we're gonna.
we might. We just might.
I'm
Okay.
getting angry.
All right.
I think we got the point now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. We got past the actors here, I think. Okay. All right. I did have somebody ask, can you give a quick, and I mean quick, tip to how to memorize? For me, it's very personal, and man,
Yes.
you got to find your own personal way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
Repetition.
spent some time.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, Tim, I think we spent some time at the beginning of Father Brown discussing rehearsals or memorization strategies,
Yeah.
because you got to kind of find your own way.
Yeah.
So, and I'll take two examples: my way of memorizing and my wife's way of memorizing, because we have very different ways, I think. Well, yeah, mine is very visual, so I need to have the script in front of me, and I memorize. It's very spatial, so I know where a certain line exists on the page. I also memorize best, for whatever reason, it's been this way all my life. I've memorized best when I'm pacing. Just if I'm just walking in circles, walking around. I used to do this for my Awana verses when I was a kid. I would, walk
Yeah.
around the house while I'm memorizing. But I think there is some science behind that, right? There's a sort of
Yeah.
kinetic
Yeah.
energy that's happening, or whatever, kinesiology that's taking place at the same time as you're memorizing your line. So for me, it's so one tip is maybe just find out what your memorization style is, because the other, my wife's style, is her best way of memorizing, and it doesn't work as well for me, but she will read her lines into whatever recording device is on hand and then just listen to them over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's, now, so that might be so those are two very, hers is much more practical than mine, frankly. I mean, it's a very simple thing you can do. Get those into a recording and just plug them in.
Yeah. Any other quick, real quick tip? Otherwise, we're going to go on.
This is going to throw a lot of directors off, but this is coming from me as an actor. My words are always tied to my movement. So for me, I really can start to memorize once I have my blocking.
Yeah.
I know that's really weird, because there's a lot of directors that okay, you get the script, come with it, memorize. I'm like, whoa, that's the hardest time for me, because for me, the way my brain cements it is movement to words. And so for me, it's always easier to memorize once I have my blocking. Then it's like, once I have my blocking, all of a sudden the gates are open and my brain locks in.
Well, because for me, I think what it is you're getting the picture in your mind of what you're thinking, why you're moving has a lot to do with your blocking.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Well, and
so
it's your
it has to be
intent.
all connected for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't memorize until I know my blocking either. So
Well, maybe that's one of
But I like Randy's wife. I record it,
yeah.
play it in the car when I'm driving back and forth to work. Gives me about an hour a day of learning lines that I don't have to carve out time for.
Yep.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's something you got to find your own way that works
Yeah.
best for you, because there's
Your
20
own
million
little-
different ways to do it.
Yep.
I would say I use a combination of the recording it so I can drive time with it and the blocking. Both of those
Mm-hmm.
are important
And
to me.
maybe that's one of the reasons why we take blocking. We, should be taking, well, there's other reasons too, but taking blocking early in the rehearsal schedule, because that helps so much in terms of beginning
I've known,
Go ahead.
sorry, I've known people who write longhand, write out all their lines too.
Yeah.
that
to help.
connect. I mean, that's the very physical connection between your brain and some kind of action, not your blocking, but
Yeah.
so that's
Leslie
that's a
Dudwodnik does
possibility.
that.
Okay, let's go into some quick hints about blocking. Boy, this is a whole area that is really, and this is one area that shows amateurish characteristics more than anything. You watch, I mean, watch the blocking, and man, you can really begin to see they're not very experienced in doing this because they've they've got rudimentary kinds of things going on, but it certainly isn't natural response to the natural flow of the human brain and the human motivation and all the rest of it. Quick tips on blocking. Let me just say a couple of things. I mean, blocking has to be purposeful. Don't move until you cannot move. I mean, cannot not move. Just keep it, solid, because otherwise you get people wandering. I mean, walking all over the place, and it's of no value. So it needs to be motivated. It needs to show relationships and characters as to who is in what position on stage at any particular time. That can even be communicated by the blocking. I don't have my notes on blocking here, but add a couple of quick phrases, not long examples, but give me some quick phrases about blocking that helped you or help you when you're directing. All right.
For a director, I would say know what your set is going to be as early on in the process as possible. Yeah. I try to have my set design before auditions.
Okay. Because
the more intimate I know what my play space is going to be, then the easier I as a director can get into the place that you're talking about is, what is the character's motivation for movement? If we don't know what they're going to have to be moving around, it's hard to do that.
So learn the ground plan as early as possible.
Yep.
Okay, next hint.
I do what Tim does. I always have my, if I don't have a set, I have it taped out on the floor where things are going to be.
The ground.
Yep. And I will tell someone when they're blocking, I'm saying, I want this line delivered and you're ending up over there. We call it organic blocking.
Right.
We joke around about it. It's like, you start off here, how you get there, I don't care.
Yeah.
It needs to make sense. And these are the people that are in the way and the people that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
And we don't want you walking to that place, stopping and saying your line. Because no one talks that way.
No.
No one works that way. So it's very much, here's where you have to end up at. Go.
Yeah.
And then we work that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I approach blocking too. It just needs to, 90% or more of blocking is organic. You go someplace because there's something there you want, right? You don't go because, oh, it's my time to go to the other side of the stage.
Yeah.
Right.
The director told me to go over here. Yeah.
So one of the things I try to do is come up with motivations. If if an actor is struggling with that, I'll help them with it. Usually I have an idea why they would go in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise I won't direct them to go there.
Right.
Yeah.
I would also say though that actors, that's part of your job. One of the things for us as directors is we're trying to tell a story and create visuals. And I usually find that if you do the good groundwork with actors prior to your blocking rehearsals, if you do the table talks, if you do the character exploration, then I get to depend upon the actors to discover their own character's motivation for movement. And I think that leads to better organic blocking, is when they're already thinking, you know.
Yeah.
And that's where I love it, when the actors start to say, I feel like this is what my character would want and want to do. That then I know that they're getting there. They're getting to the place where they're starting to react to character motivation. But as an actor, I would tell you, don't depend on your director to discover that motivation for you. That's your job. You need to be in touch with that character to make sense of that movement and understand where that motivation is coming from. That's what we're depending upon you to create.
Yeah, I would say directors, watch your actors when they're going through a scene. And boy, you'll see urges all over the place. And, you know, I will say, hey, at that thought, you really wanted to stand up. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, get up and do so then, you know, because you see the internal things that are going on. And this only can happen when they start to really begin to be part of the character instead of just reading lines. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
In a practical sense for blocking, and I totally agree. I do, like you said, most of my blocking is organic blocking, but in my mind, there's 3 things that you need to keep in mind when blocking. One is the environment that the character is in. You will walk or move differently in a confined space than you will in an open space. The second one is, of course, the actor's motivation or the actor's emotion. Is this a line or an emotion that you would sit on, you would stand on, you would move on? Again, why am I moving? And then the third one is, for very practical, the type of stage that you're on.
Yeah.
If you have blocking that's all going to be, this is where I think a lot of amateurs or people who don't know about blocking can fail, is like if you have wonderful stuff going on, but the audience can't see it. You know, there are different types of stages, proscenium, thrust, or in Master Arts Theater where you can do all different kinds of which is great. But the thing is, like, if you're doing what we like to do at Master Arts sometimes is called alley staging, then you're going to need a lot more movement for the audience to be able to see what's going on. So those are the 3 things that I try to keep in mind for blocking. And yes, I do depend very much on the actors. But so environment, where are you? And how much of a space do you have to work with? Where, you know, if you're in a boat, you're not going to be moving the same or in a room. And then, of course, the actor's emotions and motivation, and then the type of stage that you're working with. So those are the 3 things I try to keep in mind.
Yeah, very much.
I like-
Very good, Kathy. I will make one comment is always be aware of the audience and how much and who sees what at any one moment. Yeah, and that is part of, the actor has to become aware of that too. They can't be, you know, especially in our space, you know, that kind of a thing. Yes, Randy.
I was going to say, I find it helpful to plot out in a particular scene, just chart it out. Sometimes I just use a regular, you know, a graph almost. What's the high point? And that can help guide how much movement takes place. So, you know, where there's action in a play, that it's obvious, right? It speaks for itself. But approaching it in terms of, you know, the block can be a part of, should be a part of the kind of dramatic motion of the show, right? The pacing, the dramatic pacing of the show. And another possible guiding principle is not unlike music, right? Where silence is as important as sound. Stationary non-movement can be as important as movement.
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, some of them I'd like to say, I'll hold them. Well, they don't, you know, and you're not going anywhere because until, because otherwise they are just, what's happening is the nervous energy within them is just causing them to move all over the place, or
Yep.
whenever. And it's a loose cannon. And I don't know, I may do this in our real lives, but it don't need to make us all nervous too, just like
Yeah.
you are. Okay, somebody was saying something.
Well, I was just gonna say, I try to remind my actors also that when we're having conversations with people, we don't necessarily always have to turn and look directly at them.
Yeah,
We
for
have
sure.
conversations all the time where we're throwing the line over our shoulder. We're talking over our shoulder. We don't have to always look directly at, you know, every time you talk, well, I got to turn and talk directly to them because it's not natural. We
No.
got to make it natural, and we don't do that in real life.
No, it's a principle about learning to, an idea or an idea, and you pick them up at the beginning of the idea. You go into your own mind to remember it, or you re-see it or whatever, and then you'll pick them up every once in a while. But you don't stand there and do the profile acting, which you get in very inexperienced people. I mean, they just stand there and look at each other the whole time. Well, I'll say, okay, this time I'm going to have you talk. You're going to talk to them at the very beginning, and then I don't want you to look at them and at all. I remember one director in a class in whatever, and a gal said, okay, once you get the actors and they're got the thing going and they know their lines and whatever, okay, give them a pile of books that they have to alphabetize during this scene. And they've got to get this done because they're going to take these books in a suitcase with them when they're going to walk out the door, and they've got to get the job done. And so you have high motivation that they've got to get this secondary task done. And all right, that's what you do. And it's interesting. I tried that once, and I mean, I've tried similar things, not, and it's interesting when they have to keep what they want to have happen in the scene and get I know it's double tasking and all that, but it sure did make them communicate better. It was interesting the way it happened. And then when you took away the books, maybe that's what it was. Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, he said, okay, when you get later in the game and just before you're going to open, take away all the furniture.
Yeah.
And make them play it. Take away everything that they've got and make them play it. And you'll be surprised they'll start playing it because it's needing to be played, not because, other things. All right. Okay, we are at the point of, okay, most significant part of the process. Boy, I think we've talked about all kinds there. Boy, it's hard to say which is the most specific, but I will say, if you get some actors that really walk into and the audience can go with them, you almost need nothing else. I mean,
Yep.
You almost need nothing else. I'm not saying that doesn't belittle at all design or anything, and I don't mean to belittle that, but you can have all the design you want and it's not going to make the play, but acting can. And then if you add a design that really is helpful and supportive and wonderful, boy, then the whole thing can take off. And that's, what else would you say? What's the most significant part of the process, folks?
Planning and casting.
Yeah. You pay a long time for a mistake in casting. I've been there.
Yes, you do.
You pay a long time for that. Painfully long time. for
The entire run.
Yes.
And that's not easy because sometimes you're picking from small pickings.
Yes, and that's a problem with us. Sometimes we have not a lot of people to pick from. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
it also, I guess I would say, it behooves, I know if I've had to take a person that's not really the talent I wished, or at the stage of development and acting process that I wish, because I have too much work to do. Boy, then you've got to do a lot of side coaching and off. You can't use the group rehearsals to do that. You got to train them without the group rehearsal, because you can't waste the other people's time. But you must do that in order to help them get up to speed if you possibly can. Because otherwise it's a painful, it can be painful. Any other comments there about most significant process, and how do you handle, getting them up to speed? Any tips? Onward we go. All right. They ask how much time per week do we spend in directing? Oh my.
If you want to count like the pre-planning and
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
You
Setting
don't
the
sleep at
schedule.
all.
it's uncountable. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
More than people think.
But it's not
Oh,
just when you're there at the rehearsal.
Yeah, it's not just the 5 days a week, you know.
No.
It's the rehearsal schedule. It's sometimes, like Chris said, you have to work individually with actors outside of the rehearsal schedule. It's
It's the time you spend on your couch thinking, how am I going to make this thing work?
Yeah.
And you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and kind of figure out how in the world you're going to make it.
sometimes it's building and painting sets.
Yeah, it is.
At 2 o'clock in the morning.
I know. That's for sure. Okay. Let's go on to, boy, let's try to make some good hints here, but handling conflict with the cast and crew, or plus conflict that develops on the inside.
Well,
Difficult.
before I start again,
I find that whipping chairs works really well.
No.
um,
That's
I
what I did wrong.
have a list of director's rules that I print off, and then that I've developed over the years, and I have them read it, and it's a few of the rules are basically, again, like you said at the very beginning of this, Chris, first and foremost, you respect each other, you respect the director, you respect everybody involved. And then a few of the rules that I have is like, if you have an issue or a problem with one of the other cast or crew members, you come talk to me first. You don't talk to each other about it, to other cast members or crew members or whatever. You come to me and talk to me about it, and we'll try to work it out. If it's a problem with me that you have, then I try to get a liaison between the theater and the crew, or cast and crew, that they feel comfortable talking to about that. So, but I have a number of rules for when I direct, and then they are to read it. They sign each rule, or they initial each rule, they sign it, and they give it back to me so that I know that they know what my rules are, what's expected of them, and what's expected of me in dealing with them as well. So that's what I do at the very beginning, right after casting.
By the way, Kathy, I stole your list, just so you know.
No, I gave it to you because you asked for it, so I gave it to you. You didn't steal it. That's my rule. Don't steal my rules.
Well, I think ultimately it's put your expectations out right away. That's going to minimize a lot of conflict right off the bat, because you can say, hey, here's the list that you agreed to.
Mhm.
But then as a director, it's care for people first, care for the show second. People come to theater, and they do community theater because they love theater. And I think it's important for us all to remember that we're all coming here because we love to do this collaborative art thing, and we love to be around the people. But we all come from all different places and all different backgrounds, and we don't know what happened to your actors during that day. So if conflict arises, I, as a director, try and care for the person first. And then we can deal with what the conflict's doing to the show. But if I care for you first, and let you know that I care about you, that I trust you, and that you can trust me, that's going to help us get past conflicts in the show.
But,
Care for your people first.
Yeah. Being careful, caring, and compassionate. And I would say talk to the people, not together, but individually. Talk to them and
Yep.
see you can find ways to have them, communicate with each other, or at least recognize the place in the ensemble that we all have, and that is a chain is no stronger than any link, and there is no such thing as a strong link and a weak link. So anyway, I think that's a lesson of life. How do you handle conflict, period? And, I think we should be known as people, as in directorial positions, as people that are caring and compassionate and intolerant of petty conflict that shouldn't be there, and that we're going to be open, and we're going to seek out ways to erase that so that it is not part of our cast. But believe me, it can be there. I've been there.
Yeah.
And we all have.
It's important to model a cool
Yes.
head, a level head, an even keel.
Yeah.
And from the get-go, and I guess we've said this before, and it could be in terms of formalized rules, or at very least establish an expectation of professionalism that, there are lots of things that can just leave them at home, leave them outside the door. And actually there are some conflicts too, frankly, that don't need to, they might flare up in one rehearsal, and you might choose, it may be a good idea just to let it go, and it might just go away. So there are times, maybe, it's a little bit like choosing your battles. There might be certain conflicts. I guess I think of sort of the sieve, right? The screen window or whatever, right? A lot of breeze is going to blow through it. The big, if it's something big enough to get caught, then you got to deal with it. But just, just be cool.
It's hard.
Cool-headed.
Yeah, and it's hard to be cool-headed sometimes, but that's the biggest challenge that we've got, and we've got to do it. Yeah. We've got to do it. Okay. All right. I don't know which stage crew member is the most critical, or which one could you not operate without? Oh my.
Stage manager.
All
Which
of
one
them.
is my favorite finger?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How do you do that? And
They're
that
all valuable.
They're all valuable, and it depends on the show as to what kind of thing is going to be really a big factor in this particular show, and that's hard to answer in that sense. But everyone's valuable in that sense. And what you get then is sometimes you get a lot of advice by some people you know and trust, that they aren't even on the quote production team, but they've been the most helpful to you because you've been able to share with them some things, and they can be the most support to you. We've been there and done that. So, okay. This might be a simple answer. There isn't an answer, but anyway, which is harder, a straight play or a musical? Ha!
I think
Musical.
there really isn't. The only thing is musicals take a little bit longer because you got music, you got dancing, and you got blocking and reading. So I mean, it's not. I don't think. I mean.
Yeah, I agree with Lorna. I think musicals are. I have a hard time with musicals because I want to do the depth of character work that you don't necessarily have the time for. Because you've got to have your musical rehearsal, you've got to have your choreography rehearsal, there's a musical demands more.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
However, a lot of times if it's a musical, I hate to say this way because the musicals I've done are not this way, and maybe that's my fault. But most of the time, there isn't as much consistent depth in scene character work in a musical because a lot of it tends to be you go into a song.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the song can carry some depth and character work and movement of plot that a straight play you have to deal with in different ways. So I think they're two very different animals, but I personally, even though I've only directed musicals here at Master Arts, I find musicals to be more demanding because I expect the character work to be and the relationship work to be the same in a musical as I do in a straight play, but I have more demands on my time.
I totally agree with Tim. My problem with musicals is well, not problem, but my I guess weaknesses with musicals is I am not musically trained. So I'm very dependent upon my music director, who I've been very blessed with wonderful music directors to take on that part of it. So I feel I've been, like I said, been blessed to have wonderful musical directors and learn to let that go and let them do the work that the music, the depth of the music and all all that entails to them. Let that go, which is can be difficult for me to let something go. But then I don't find myself having enough time to do character development for the rest of the show. I try to put that in there, but yeah, you've got music, you've got choreography, you got to fit that all. And generally with musicals, you have a shorter period of time to do that because you're trying to fit those three elements in, and you only have a certain amount of time because you can only get the rights for a certain amount of time to do that.
But anyway.
So, I find musicals harder to direct, just because of the development time, the time period. Personally, I guess if you want to bring it down to that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
go ahead.
I'm gonna come right out and say plays are way harder than musicals.
That's because you're a music director.
Says the musical guy. Yeah.
Says the music director.
No, but what I mean, but what you're saying, actually, a lot of what you're saying kind of corroborates that. So the challenge with, I guess, it took me a long time to figure this out, frankly. You know, a song in a way, how do I put this? We all want musicals to sound good, so I'm just going to put that right out there, right? But there's a certain aspect, a certain degree to which a song speaks for itself. You've got like music. I mean, we know this about music. Music does a thing that words don't. So that gives us, I think, as directors, there's freedom in that because, you know, I mean, musicals, frankly, do swap out deep, rich character development. That's not to say they don't exist. They certainly do, and there are some that do it powerfully and tremendously, but those are standouts. But most musicals, there's a certain amount of, there's a trade-off. What you have in choreography and in music and song, it's a flavor of its own that is not necessarily independent of character development, but does something other than what we would think of character development doing in a straight play. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. And a lot of times in a straight play, you don't have that to depend on.
Right, exactly. That's why I say they're harder. Because man, every second, like you don't have a 4-measure musical interlude where somebody can do some choreography to, I'm a music, you all know I do music directing. So if it sounds like I'm belittling them, I'm not. I'm just, I find that there's a degree of comfort.
The music does a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that of course that depends on doing the music.
If
gotta
you
be able
do
to
it well,
music. So that's the trade-off, right?
Well.
But but so I guess, you know, maybe we can go easy on ourselves as far as, man, I really wish I could develop those characters, and say, no, instead of that, the limited time resource that we have, let's approach it, you know, with a slightly different, you know, from a different perspective.
They're different animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. So.
Yeah, they are, and yet, why do we sing? Because speech can no longer hold the passion. If
Yeah.
it's there, say it. If you don't have to sing it, say it. So the characters, I don't know. And for me, they have to have the passion gain in them so strong that they have to break into song because speech can no longer handle it. And I, you know, when that happens with with 2 people, 4 people, a chorus or whatever, and I've seen it happen. And when that happens, it just carries, and like you say, Randy, it just carries it to another element because there's another modality there that adds to the passion and takes and carries the passion. And that I think is a real reward that we can get from musicals that we don't get from straight plays. Although, you know, the passion's got to be there otherwise in a straight play. I don't know which is harder. I'm not going to argue. Both of them demand all that we've got, and that's where I think we have to go. And anyhow, all right, okay. Although I believe everything. I mean, I totally understand all that you're saying, you guys. That's for sure. All right, just a couple of more things, and I think we've covered enough material to give people, you know, some thoughts to chew on.
Maybe take these last 2, Chris, and just do, without a whole lot of explanation, just have everybody answer these last 2 questions.
What about, what is a favorite show or a least favorite show?
Favorite show and most difficult show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just think, and I want, you know, you can say favorite and the name and least favorite, although that may be incriminating here.
Most difficult. I'm going to go with the most difficult, not the least favorite.
Oh, that's right. Most difficult.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Oh my.
Start with you, Chris.
Yeah. Boy, yeah. Oh, there's so many in the favorite kind of thing, but I guess I would say Crucible is a favorite of mine because of just period. And one of the most difficult, but probably very rewarding, was Copenhagen, just because of the style of the show.
Mm-hmm. I'll call off people's names. Walt Williams.
Please. I guess one of my favorites was All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, and its sequel, Oh, Here Comes Christmas. I like directing episodic things, and they were very storytelling, very episodic. And I had some amazing actors in both. So that was my favorite. My everything I liked about it.
Most difficult?
I don't know that I have. Yeah, I've done 18 years of youth summer stock, so some of those have been my most difficult.
Randy, we'll go to you next.
Favorite show, probably for musicals, The Secret Garden. We did at Cornerstone in 2003, I think. So it's one of my favorites. For straight plays, a favorite of mine is The Real Inspector Hound, short comedy. Yeah. It changes. Then most difficult two hold a place there. One is An Enemy of the People, the Arthur Miller adaptation of Ibsen's play. That was just because there's so much going on, and it's and then Angel Street, which is well, it's the only psychological thriller that I've ever directed, and I mean there's so much we take for granted in film that is incredibly difficult to do on stage. So I'd like actually another chance at that one. So.
Dale Bales.
Favorite show would be Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. Just the whole experience that it created. And most difficult show was Imaginary Invalid, because that thing changed so many times, especially the ending. So that was a treat.
Kathy Van Lopik.
Well, I have lots of favorites, but one of my all-time favorites directing was The Christmas Schooner, which is a musical, and a lot of that had to do with the music. Each of the songs told a story, and I just liked the whole story of the show, and the music really, the songs really fed into that story. One of my most difficult was when I directed Willy Wonka at Caledonia Community Players, and that was because of the cast. There was a lot of infighting in the cast, talking about whether a cast can make or break a show. For me, that was one of the worst experiences of my life, just because of the infighting of the cast and everything. So my other experience with Willy Wonka was great, but that was just primarily because of the cast. So.
John Miedema.
Oh, that's hard for me to come up with, but right off the top of my head, without thinking too deeply about it, it would be Father Knows Best was my favorite, and it was my most difficult. Because as I had spoken before, there was a lead actor that didn't cooperate well. So that was most difficult, but it was also the most fun and most rewarding. At this
Walt Wriggler.
I'm hoping that I can find others down the road.
Walt Wriggler.
Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged. That was my favorite. That was a blast. There's a lot that give it competition, but I'd say that was my favorite. And Blithe Spirit.
Oh.
That had challenges. There were just some significant challenges. Part of them of my own making, and part of them were just unavoidable. So.
Lorna.
My favorite musical that I directed was my first show here, Man of La Mancha. My favorite straight play, also here, Christmas at Pemberley. My most difficult show that I've ever directed was Rebel Without a Cause in Ann Arbor. And it's kind of like Kathy said, I had a lot of fighting in the cast. A lot of people did not get along at all. And I had one particular actor that was kind of stirring the pot for everybody else. So that was a very difficult show to direct for me. So.
I'll finish up. My favorite straight play was one I directed at Holland Community Theater, Civic Theater. I don't remember what it was called at the time I was directing it, but it was the Cemetery Club, because I was it was one of my first directing experiences, but I had perfect casting, and Ruth Smith, who many of you know, I got a chance to work with her when I was a very young dude, and just that cast was wonderful, and it was a great experience. Favorite musical I've directed would have to be The Singer here at Master Arts, for a number of reasons. One, because it's a story that's meant a lot to me, and I got a chance to adapt the script and work with a very close friend with the music. It was also the most difficult show, mostly because due to the nature of the story that Calvin Miller wrote, it ended up being unbelievably personally affecting to almost every person in the cast. So there was a lot of personal struggle and counseling that had to go through it. I spent a lot, like Chris, like you said, sometimes you have to just take the time and spend a lot of extra time with your actors individually to help them. And that one demanded a lot of me. It was the most difficult show I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding musical I've ever done. So it encapsulated it all. So I think it's a good end. Pris, if you want to close
I
us.
just want to summarize by saying we are very honored by God to be put in a position to help facilitate bringing together a group of people and a group of artists, and that includes cast and crew and everybody that anywhere near, even the publicity and all the rest of it. We are very honored to be given the responsibility by God to bring these people together to try for a common cause and for the cause of making impact in whatever way that the show does, etc., and the experience does. And so I encourage us all to keep that very seriously in mind as we go about exercising our artistry humbly before God, because we have a chance to encourage like no one else can. And so I just want to leave it with that thought. What a blessing it is to have the opportunity. And I hope, and we just pray as directors and as crew people and as actors and whatever, that the impact we have a chance to grow ourselves, but then share with others is what the body of Christ is all about. And hey, you guys, I admire you, I respect you, and that's why I'm glad we had this time together today. And all of you that are listening, that are a part of it in any way, shape, or form, may you feel our respect and may you feel our companionship in the job that God gives to us as we serve him. Okay?
Amen.
Thanks
all of you for taking time tonight and joining us online. And to all of you watching, I'm sorry we didn't really get to a time of extra questions, but we talked about a lot. So this is going to be made available on our YouTube channel probably within a week or so. So once it is, pass it around to your friends and other folks to listen to these wise people talk about different things. So thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. I don't know. What do you need?